Okay, are you guys okay with being filmed?
Sure. Alright. Wait, just
Oh, shit.
Oh.
Sorry. I forgot I have to start the round to everyone. Alright, go for it.
Alright. Lynn, ready? Alright.
A just society necessitates looking at smaller political units of states because they foster community. Decide. The smaller size set of facility condition necessary for just society spirit disencourages a smaller political unit foster community, also increases opportunities for political participation, enables the exchange of information and deliberation necessary for participation. Therefore, both debaters must debate under the context of the status most textual for the resolution, and my role to balance the vote for the debater who best mirrors the decisions of ethical policymakers. Car. Politics cannot be disconnected from education. Most of education play a political role developing education policy, define behaviors from minority issues, the contextualization of history, discussion, power relation, being able to introduce productions of ideas to ensure implication is the domain of political education realms. So conditions are unfavorable to enact change. Governmental authorities have enormous resources to shape and influence people. Therefore, the enactment of competing policy attitude the status quo. 8 points that necessary test the resolution. Individual entities, individual duties and burdens different from institutional burdens, especially because the law bans presumed consent. The B point is topic education. LD has unique value because of the topic rotation, which has unique education value. It's key to test individual philosophers and other resolutions. C point is that it's necessary test competition, otherwise the app will lose on vague reject alternatives and non-committed counterpoints. Explicit advocacy allows for textual and functional tests of competition. And policymakers cannot adhere to abstract strike stages to trade-offs. Means the only way to fix this is to aggregate interest. Waller. Appeals to operator principle fail to acknowledge public policy and navigate to internal trade-offs among community policy. Policymakers due to public interest requires them to demonstrate that affects the overall advantage of society. Others have severe practical limitations basis for public policy. Policymakers have an ethical duty to establish reasonable assurance that policy will actually do something about an existing problem. And ethical policymaking requires calculation of consequences. Gosdev. Morality is judged by results on intention. Policymakers must weigh the consequences of actions to seek solutions. It must be under the concrete circumstances, time, and place. Holding out the most moral outcome rather than finding a workable compromise could avoid bloodshed. And utility has to take into account all beings, science proves. Anderson. The use of animal research must be considered. Rights are often obstacle for operating evaluation of organ parts, and Goodall finds a minor characteristic in human life such as reasoning, emotion, financial discretion, and perhaps the propensity to love stuff in human primates, all of which are absent in human infants. Placing biological beings hierarchy mirrors what we identify as human part gene or transplant study approval. Thus, my standard is maximization of worth for all beings. Plan. The states ought to presume consent for organ procurement from the deceased in the United States. I reserve the right to clarify. In CX, Part 1 is uniqueness. She knows how to recent breakthroughs on the rise. Now, one of the main costs because of a lack of alternative options. Medical News Today 1. Medical News Today reported breakthrough on gene transplantation science that demonstrated success in keeping genetically engineered human hearts alive. She knows it's a burning issue because crippling shortage of available organs. Many people have to die. 18 people died each day because of shortage of organ donation. The U.S. has witnessed more than 500 increased past 2 decades. The number of people willing to donate, however, is only doubled until we learn to go organs via tissue engineering. She knows seems to be a valid approach. However, as technology vanishes and implementation draws closer, so much the public conversation over animal organ transplantation in advance in order to hold the science accountable. And she knows on the rise of presumed consent is key to solve. Nelson. She knows on the rise of chronic shortage of organs. UNICEF is allocating organs nationally. Only 1 in 5 people is connected to donating their organs. The death number of donors remains low. The European consent law, however, has been overwhelmingly effective, especially in Austria, where available is tribute after the presumed consent law is implemented. By establishing this law, we have saving many lives, and we will have provided a smart alternative to Shino. And Shino creates arbitrary divides between the human animal and the animal. Cooper. Shino graphs cannot provide ethically acceptable solution to scarcity of organs. If any animals or person that harvesting their organs isn't permissible, non-human animals are constantly human organs at this stage of technology are also more likely to benefit the recipients. The first step towards increasing the number of organs available for transplantation to be a move to an off-hour retrieval policy. There is still insufficient organ meets demand for assessment of organ transplantation would be needed. Advantage 1 is disease. Shino gives neurons for zoonotic diseases. The impact is extinction. Cooper. She knows dangerous sticks from a target top population, put a risk virus and animals and gain a rid of entry to human population, not ordinary. Our state of knowledge is too incomplete to reach virus of animals because we don't even know the virus that needs to be eliminated. AIDS results from a virus given new risk of entry. Ebola is another virus emitted from humans and primates. Better alternative exists. Presumed consent would greatly expand the pool of available organs. Instead, we are absurdly rushing down the path for our danger. Advantage 2 is healthcare. She knows herself for their ability to address other step problems such as disease and advances healthcare, which allows for millions of deaths to happen each year. MNT. The Shino debate precedes of saving the lives of top moral parties. The last lot down the line do not count. 11 million people die each year from diarrhea, malaria, and measles that are not related to related to transplantation issues. People die from others unrelated to transplantation. Shino will be made obsolete by future developed research, and implementation will be very expensive, and that seriously erodes the case for perceiving resources are far from infinite. Solvency. The 8 point in psychology, people are motivated to follow defaults since they respect freedom of choice. Presumed consent is the best middle ground. Burroughs. Psychology principle being used to change public decisions through default. People tend to go with the flow of free option. We can pursue options that promote health and well-being, requiring those who want to go against grain. The CDC has built times for recommending opt-in for HIV screening for Austria, France, and Poland, and Portugal have such a system for oral procurement, and as a result, 91% of citizens are urged to convert. Only 5 to 30% of countries that do not use defaults. B point is empiric. Cross-national studies conclude NETA. 34 country fibers analyze quantum regression of phantom data is because there's been criticism of results obtained from other approaches due to some allies. This paper is the first to apply this method of investigation to the subject presumed because that has a positive effect of 21 to 26% cadaveric organ donation. Prefer my study. 8.5 big study, 34 country indicated empirically provides more organs to prefer this. I see examples of small number of studies since the cross-national trend. B point is time it's been done over a period of 5 years proves the increase of time. Increase was stable and consistent over time. The third point is skew might have taken into account different skews that happens to GDP, health expenditure, etc. So their evidence bias to alternative costs of lower donation. The C reason for I solve is public discussion. Contrary to state policy, will at worst delay Shino, so I have access to solvency. Ratchet. The sort of context in which any laws to operate must be considered determining policy. Presumed consent can lock in follow important public debate and demonstration that will be most acceptable to most people. Presumed consent must be explored before Shino it would avoid or at least postpone the risk of it being implemented. However, it's not known if such measure will be sufficient to close the gap. D point is access. States allow for citizens to access organ procurement much faster. Gundam. We should cast doubt on the chance of presumed consent being passed at the federal level. The federal level is not a possibility as this issue is better addressed at the state measure. How the people in Congress wouldn't go for legislation being donation to the national forefront and help educate the population, even if legislation isn't passed. We're doing so in the state law. It can't go to 0, 100% on the federal level. Organ donation more of a state issue as it's too big of a step federally. Underview. Neither debater may justify the RVI in the last speech. First, key to reciprocity. I can make RVIs in 2 AR, so they shouldn't be able to make it in 2 NR. Second, is strategy prevents me from knowing what theory is going to implicate in the 1 AR, so resets based on theory in 2 NR if they newly justify the RVI. Next decision both defendants must have a solvency advocate that advocates the whole absence of empirically verified if the affirmative solvency is also empirically verified. First, it prevents me from weighing since AC solvency based on empirical claims about the status quo in Congress how presumed consent empirically works. That allows them to fiat solvency since they can just assert that it works without real implementation. Backup means they're always going to be ahead on the weighing debate.
Okay. Right. Cool. Everyone good? Yeah. All right. What does this last slide read about the solvency advocate?
If you don't defend the SQO, you have to have a solvency advocate that's empirically verified.
It's if I don't defend the SQO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Go to like the last one, the next one, the underview one before I begin.
Yeah.
So I can't defend it or like justify it in the last speech. So that means I have to justify it in the 1NC.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I tell you my strat for the 1NC right now, will you tell me if you're gonna read theory in the 1AR?
I mean, it would have to depend on like the argument to make against the AC and stuff too, not just your like the K.
Okay, I'm gonna read answers to the AF and I'm gonna read a K. Are you going to read theory in the next speech?
Well, there's I can't like make that decision like right now. I personally
okay, so what's uniquely better about not justifying it like justifying it prior to you reading theory?
So I make 2 claims. First, if you read theory in the 2NR, I can't make a new RVI in the 2AR because that's like totally new.
Okay. So what I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no way I'm reading theory in the 2NR. There's a 0% chance of that happening.
Okay, then that would take out the reciprocity standard.
If you read, okay, so if you read theory in the 1AR,
okay, you won't read theory in the 2NR. Okay.
I will not read theory
Okay,
in the 2NR.
all right. So then sure, I guess that would solve the reciprocity standard.
Okay.
But still, strat skew is still there, right?
Okay, so
because
the strat
that just
skew
changes and it's uniquely key on the theory debate since theory is like a game.
Why is the strat skew argument unique to you though? So like I don't know what theory is going to imply in the 1NC considering you haven't read it yet. In the 1AR, if you read a new shell, why do I not get to like make the argument again, make the RVI argument?
So the argument is that like if I don't know what theory is going to imply, I may or may not read it, right? So for example, like a theory argument might be strategic if the RVI isn't there,
okay.
But it might not be strategic if the RVI is present.
Sure.
But there's
so
also
like, I don't know
other
what theory is going to
instances.
imply in the 1NC.
But there's also other instances
if I read
where
theory
I'd
in
be
the next
comfortable.
speech. Okay, yeah, sure. So I don't know what theory is going to imply for you if I read theory in the 1NC. Why is this a unique argument?
Wait,
because you didn't justify an RVI in the 1AC, I can't read theory in the 1NC because I don't know what under that interpretation.
No, the thing is that like it's early
saying.
enough in the round to the point that it like doesn't significantly skew, right? The argument that
why
I'm making is that
Because
it's uniquely key for the one AR because after that it's like the last rebuttals where you like can't make new arms and stuff.
Okay, cool.
I'm saying that's uniquely key to the 1AR.
Okay.
You can say that also applies to the NC when you answer the standard, but like that's just the argument that I put.
On the role of the valid argument.
Sure.
So it's just whoever best mirrors the decisions of ethical policymakers.
Right.
What does that entail?
And I contextualize that policymakers have to be util, that's Gosdev and Waller.
Okay.
And then yeah, I'm sure you know what they say.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then like
Okay.
utility has to take you
I
to
meant
all
so
beings.
if you mirror the decisions of ethical policymakers, does that necessarily mean that you're like passing a policy?
Well, yeah, I have like a plan text.
Sure.
I guess
So like, yeah,
that's
you're, okay, so
right.
yeah, that's fine. You're passing policy, but a decision of a policymaker doesn't necessarily entail only a policy, right?
I mean, like that's how I contextualize it. You can recontextualize what it means to be a policymaker in the NC,
Okay.
of course.
I'll start with that.
Okay, you get 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and like flash me the one NC.
Yeah.
Got it.
So what does the decide evidence mean?
It means that,
It just means that you can read states instead of the U.S. right?
right, and then I say that this means that states are the most textual, so we should debate it in the context of what a state would do.
Okay, that's the only implication of it.
Right.
Okay. Alright, 237 left, one off case. There you go.
Alright, what's it?
It's speech 1 and C. Hi, Jason.
Okay.
It's gonna be one off case. On case, it's gonna start on the framework and then the policy making argument.
Okay. Alright, so let me get my rows ready. Alright, I'm starting on framework.
Yeah.
Alright,
Right. Everybody good?
let's start with a second. Okay, alright.
First, questions of ontology must be asked and answered first. The crucial form all other aspects of policymaking. Dylan, the relevance of ontology thinks is inescapable with ontology. The issue, the foundation of any thought or written problematic. The ontology subscribes to the problem in one way rather than another. Shapes the way of being. Decisions, a way of being, bears understanding of being. And policymakers are individuals first and foremost, which means they must look their identities in terms of ethical, political priorities. So it means that my prerequisite to your car evidence, cropsy, the question of being a source of all being, and thus all understanding, forgetting this for distortion of knowledge, lose the past question with out of managed reduced to calculating beats only concern preservation. And the role of the ballot is the judge to embrace the epistemological tradition the humanist educator which seeks to liberate oppressed bodies and help them claim their subjectivity and control the internal links of your role of the ballot, because in order for effective policy making to occur, we have to have an authentic development first of free air. Authentic education mediated by the working rights of these views apply themes which education build humanism consists of making the emergent awareness of full humanity. We cannot give knowledge or ability to body of good. Many educational plans fail because authors quote design according to the person who's reality, never taking into account except object, the subject for the human subject, the object faction, the reality transform the other people, the oppressors, indoctrinate, adjust people to reality, which man untouched, the revolution leaders, objectify alongside people, the revolution's role is liberating with the people. And this critical price key to understanding other other oppressive ideologies serves mean check back subjugation, violence, status quo, Giro. Education critical practice serves means for disconnect, narrowly ideological impact, mass media, rituals, responsible state, pervasive state repression, self-reflection, the willingness to resist domination, or also to education refuse to be the wars, vast gates, possibilities of the future without such thing, date dialogues, slogans, politics, the power grab. Part 2 is the criticism. The way we view organ procurement and transplants reduce the body to a machine or tool. It's a technocratic method of revealing it. This separates from our being and enforces signification, self, and view others based on their utility. Svenius 10. We think about our bodies and machines, the computer technology describing and explaining their workings, alienation as soon as I follow the function of my organ. This is my sense of self, the machine or tool like body of the organ, introduce to distribute myself, my organs, and the more my organs no longer embody its on ground, the rather tool become more failed forms functions leads to a rather anxious way of being in the world, fearing, searching for medical explanations, ailments are like the possibilities of constructing growing organs, abilities to move them between bodies, adamantly refuting the view of our body complex machine. The question of organ transplants is that nature as a consequence of modern technology will no longer be able to show its health in terms that we think about a handle approach, something in measure to be used up. We are no longer able to receive the otherness, the existence, if you lost from our view, the perspective of organ transplantation, the phenomenal embodiment, we become instrumentalized. And technocratic methods are revealing that it means that even people become a research to be utilized and discarded like trash. The entire world becomes an object for use. Disconnects from our ability to authenticate means that if we force the environment and people and the world into a standing reserve, allows exploitation, resulting in infinite violence and order. Technological thinkers view all things in standing reserve. All here is for human use. No ecosystem has any significance for human desire. All things are instruments. Even people become research to manage and control. This technological method of revealing is embedded in Western culture now. It's on its way to extinguishing all other methods of revealing. And we need a break from calculated thought employed by the acts, details, and meditation on our actions and total control of nature. Only this opens a path for policies that don't operate in technological ground and allows for other solutions to become a reality corrose. Attempts to reckon existing reality morphological and the technological behavior of the opposite. This operates through the standard. The symptoms of standard reserve can only be varied. These symptoms, the call for action operates the world in order. This needs systems of action test to prove more at the same time to engage in problems level of thought. It's on a superficial refusal of reality, applying vanity with the real injuries. Festering. The first step is to recognize I've only one understanding of many to convert technology that I have prepared to my calculus, the thinking and pursue ontological questions. And meditative thought is the only way to access deeper questions of ontology. Spanos. The end of pursuit of knowledge according to develop post-colonial form of communal practices is to produce peace. And this peace will be achieved only by total colonization, pacification, the other reconciling, how to construct metaphysical thinking, theological tradition produced post-colonial critique of imperialism suppose this course tend to be blind to refuse take seriously enabling the Western imperialism as they practice such a deeply incorrect ideology state produce truth and the metaphysical ontology. Go to the AC first on util. Util is a link that reproduction their reduction of their impacts calculated numbering destroys relationality to the violence causing error replication to more violence. Vista Nathan 88. These scenarios the nuclear attachment area the secondary kinetic availability of both human spectacular term ideology, bureaucratic science, bureaucratic normality, genocide scenarios, calling for predictability, timetable death, extrapolate statistical highly inability science talk meaningfully about death and genocide scenario. The scenario mirroring the disembodied future computer program provides the discipline, the additional calculus, definition, woefully banning the structure of evil lies in the very banality, bureaucratic science, genocide, because an office, the memo, since the death warrants, but not the truth, but images, conservative documentary fantasy, masquerade theories, and experimental verification. And this is a reason to reject his role of valid and prefer mine. And second, on policy making spike, I defend national lead to a policy, also I defend a policy of obligation to do something which meets the spike, also I defend methods of policy making, that's what corrupts the ontological development comes first, and counterinterpretation, the negative is one non-policy action, the action is if the action is unconditional, and one prefer this term because one ground to be impossible for me to read Heidegger working in states, state action, or working in second Heideggers. The best thing on topic is Cap, good case like Cap, and or Fem, good athlete. Two, reciprocity, he could write K out and he got off because reputation, he also can weigh against K, whatever athlete you want me, still circle burdens, and K outweighs theory, you want to start me from anything K, but you can challenge judgment from knowledge and reproduction and Bayron, and no link for real world fiat, illusory voting actions, translating real world change, critique, and reputation better, policy making, biting the technocratic thought, and policy moves past bad policy means prefer the K. And on the anthro part, the first part of the AC, turn anthropocentrism key to survival and understanding the importance of the ecosystem, future generations, tells the environmental destruction, the radical biosystem cause extinction. This is often expected your framework, Huang 03. While our ability to affect future is meant to our ability to foresee the results of environmental interventions does not many life sciences point out bodily marks ahead, shredding delicate uses of living countless species, short-term payoff motives for natural environment, what is needed, the denial of anthropocentrism, and what rather is we need explicit recognition, hierarchical system that can be ecological science and accumulation scientific knowledge with the myriad of relationships, hierarchical systems recognize the use of humanity, anthropocentrism essentially even to human survival and radical biotic egalitarianism which undermine conditions for survival. And on the disease stuff, the first advantage, your article says that Zeno isn't a bad thing, Cooper. Nevertheless, this is his author. Nevertheless, almost every medical scientific advance being possible to exclude all risk, even if it's related, they're on either to unknown big viruses or bacteria. We must reduce our obligation to take all possible steps and minimize inadequacy versus society. We have more obligation to accept a small risk to the community, and new treatment leads to great benefit to many individuals in the community. Now, the potential benefit of zero transplantation is our immense. Many millions of people will be with such diverse conditions such as diabetes and degenerative brain disease may have the quality of their lives vastly improved in those. And advanced organ failure, xenotransplantation will be life-saving. Additionally, genetic manipulation won't create supersedes GSA, and no date, and some supersedes. These risks are far exaggerated in public eyes. Public needs to understand the potential consequences of genetic manipulation, the responsibility to foster enlightenment. Go to the healthcare advantage. Aging populations are increasing globally. This requires significant healthcare spending and address chronic disease. Chronic disease are the leading cause of death globally. Deloitte 14. Aging populations are anticipated to place a huge burden on the healthcare system. The current growth rate of the older population is significantly higher than that of total population, boosting spending on chronic age-related diseases. Chronic diseases are the leading cause of mortality in the world. 63% of all deaths cost treatment is expected to develop more intense focus and presumed consent cost a lot of money. In turn to your healthcare arguments, ODT, ought to require considerable cost per the need to implement public awareness programs. They would reach every adult in ongoing education. Public awareness central capital would be required into the secure database plus running costs and ongoing training of healthcare professionals, and healthcare budgets are finite. Trade-offs are key to aging population. Gillum and 11 and all countries healthcare budgets are finite. Leaders and managers are difficult decisions about how to allocate limited resources in the budget continually elastic for the aging population with growing and costly treatment tech. This straight turns your advantage means presumed consent kills the ability to provide adequate healthcare. Also get out the solvency advocate argument. I have a straight solvency advocate. The corrosive evidence that is a solvency advocate for the alternative. And on insolvency, group it. A meta-analysis 30 studies includes the presumed consent does not increase donation rates for tell you at all. A database research will look at studies and presumed internet search results perform quality of service assess those studies meet the criteria. These studies compare it from different countries. They study as well as the impact factors of presumed consent and organ donation. The conclusion of presumed consent is unlikely to explain organ donation rate. Got the card at rate.
Can you show me where you cut it off?
Yeah.
So it's before we start process.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Rate.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Alright, cool. Okay, so before that, so the stuff you didn't read is the known diseases stuff?
Yep.
Okay. And you read everything else?
Yep.
Very cool. How does a judge evaluate the realm? Under the framework of your critique?
Sure, so that's under the free air evidence. The free air evidence indicates that you would allow people to express authentic subjectivity, which would indicate that you would embrace the Corot's alternative.
Okay, so basically it's like whoever wins like more impacts to your like roll of the ballot.
It's not more impact back to the roll of ballot.
Or sorry, like
win a
outweighed
strength of-
impact, right?
I would still say that you have to indicate a strength of link back to the roll of the ballot. I would say like the weighing analysis would probably be something that this Nathan evidence would criticize. I think that the argument here is that like I'm showing you that there's a strength of link back to the roll of the ballot.
Wait. Isn't strength of link just like if you like concede an argument or something? Why necessarily like
Strength of link
just
would just indicate that this is more textual to the roll of the ballot or something of that nature.
Wait, so how do we determine if something's more textual to like being a humanist?
Sure. So the argument in the McWhorter evidence, the impact and decay, talks about how like the standing reserve kills people's ability to like subjectively authenticate their ontological selves, which would mean that is like first off pretty textual.
Okay, so let's go.
Also.
Okay, so you say you have a solvency advocate, but okay, so you only have a solvency advocate, right? Your Giroux evidence doesn't talk about empirics.
The Giroux evidence isn't the solvency evidence. The Corot's evidence.
Oh, sorry, Corot's evidence.
The Corot's and Spanos specifically indicate that like the way that we should solve this is through meditative thought. That's how we
Okay,
actually
so
receive
who
requests
does the
from public.
meditative thought?
The actors of the app. So I would say the state legislature.
The state legislature should do it? Okay.
The state legislature that has the app.
So the state legislature will do this meditation.
So sure, like the implications of the meditative thought alternative though is that like the first step is that they would meditate on the action and realize that like presumed consent or organ procurement is technocratic in and of itself.
Wait,
With
so
that,
they would
that would mean
meditate.
they would reject that sort of like.
Okay, so you're saying that the meditation would entail a rejection, right?
The
Where does-
meditation would lead to a rejection.
Okay, so and the rejection and the reason for why they would reject it is
It's because
in
it's
your Lincoln
technocratic,
impact, right?
yeah.
Your Lincoln impact. Okay, cool. So what exactly does it mean to like be technocratic? Is
Sure,
that
so
just
that
like
means that, like,
calculating stuff?
No, not necessarily. There's a lot of implications for what it means to be technocratic. The Speen's evidence indicate that specifically you're technocratic because you're viewing things as like viewing human beings that like even post-mortem human beings, or like the idea of presuming consent for organ procurement is viewing something as something to be utilized or is just like taken up, and that takes away the value of the
so you're saying that me utilizing like the human body is like that.
It's not necessarily you utilizing the human body is bad. It's that you utilizing the body in a certain way that specifically indicates that they have certain value only whenever they like have the ability to offer you something, puts them into a standing reserves with McWhorter evidence talks about.
Okay, cool. All right, and the critique is pre-fiat, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go on the warrants for why it, like you say fiat's illusory.
Yeah. So
so you're saying you don't fiat the alternative?
No, the argument is that like fiating a policy action isn't something that like.
Wait, but didn't you just say that the state people are gonna meditate before they pass policies? Isn't that
Yeah, it's not a
action?
policy action. The argument isn't that like I'm passing a policy action. It is that we are doing something first before we pass a policy action.
Okay. So why exactly is fiat illusory?
Sure. The argument in that is that fiat isn't a thing outside of the debate round. So all we have in like the debate round is what we can like talk about and what we can see based on the debate round. The argument here is that like in order for us to have any sort of the actual change that can be viewed would be through a critical like argument that criticizes the representations about policy making. That leads to a better policy making.
So is this a reason to like reject the app or?
No, it's not a reason why to reject the app. It's a reason to reject your rule of the ballot.
Okay, I'll start. Do you defend the critique unconditionally?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, stop prep. I have 2:15 left. Order order is going to be AC and then the K. Starting on I'm going to start on the underview, and then I'm going to go to the framework, and then AC substance, and then the critique. Okay. Alright, yeah, I'm going to start on the underview framework substance critique. Alright. Should I do ready? Opponent ready? Good. Alright. Extend the interpretation of that position, don't defend the status quo and status solvency after the actually the whole absolute empirically verified the affirmative, solvency empirically verified, extend the first inference going since AC solvency based on empirical claims, extend the second, extend the fact that it also allows them to be out solvency, they just assert the works without real inflation background, means they're also going to be held in solvency debate. That's not actually key to fairness because the only means that we're going to be able to win the round is if we're able to like weigh impacts back to his rule of value determine whoever has the strongest strength of link to the rule of that he says cross examination. This means that there's no way that can actually weigh against the argument, and also for voter fairness about competitive activity, anything we objective evaluation, judge on put down, and education voters debate and academic activity in which you learn about different policy and philosophical attitudes. This also means that you drop the argument and since defense the sense and defense the critique unconditionally is functionally the same as dropping the attitude. So that means you're going to be dropping him since you're dropping his attitude, and also extend the fact that neither debater may justify the argument and not speak sheet or policy. I can't make arguments to error, so they shouldn't be able to error, and no arguments from the fallacy of 1918 as far as the law 12 abusive now doesn't law 12 non-abusive vote up. Now let's go to the AC. Go to the framework, extend my decide evidence that just society necessitates looking at the units of state. He's conceding the implication of the decide evidence, which in the case that we have to debate under the context of means that he's conceding to a policy making paradigm. Extend the car evidence means the world of balance goes to debate best mere decision of ethical policy making. He says that that Utah is necessarily oppressive, but that's problem like he's conceding my Anderson. I extend Anderson. This means that I don't defend like a straight up utilitarian calculus, but rather I defend that we have to look at the worth of all beings, not only just humans. Means that I also have to take into account the oppression, which means that you prefer my role about because my role about is going to want to take into account all beings, as opposed to he's only talking about human-centric beings because so therefore my role about is more inclusive, and thus you prefer mine and extend my Waller evidence. This means that utility has to take into account like all beings, which means that we have to evaluate consequences. Go to the unique instance. He's conceding medical news today. He's conceding my medical news today in evidence, which means that it's had recent breakthroughs on the rise. Now specifically, we have been demonstrating success in keeping engineered clinical starts alive. That's a huge. That's going to be a huge advancement in genome transplant technology. Now let's go to the anthro stuff. Extend my anthro impact. That's the Cooper evidence, which this means that it's inherently as far as it creates arbitrary divides between human animal and the animals. His impact turns to for why like it leads to extinction is literally has absolutely no warrant. Just says that it's going to keep humans survival. There's no warrant for why. And also second, this impact also outweighs on the premise since I defend a utilitarian calculus for all beings and so far as that he's oppressing all animals. Since there are more animals than humans, means that I outweigh on magnitude, outweigh his turn on magnitude. Go to the disease impact. Extend my Cooper evidence. This means that leads to zoonotic disease. His impact doesn't make any sense because it talks about evolving disease. Doesn't talk about zoonotic disease. Zoonotic disease is whenever things transfer between population to population. It cites, and also this means you err out on empirics because it cites two specific examples. That's AIDS and Ebola were both zoonotically transferred and one had two of the most deadliest diseases on the planet. And now let's go to the solvency. And now that's also a reason for why you can group all of his healthcare terms. They don't make any sense because just because it's expensive, my MT evidence indicates that it's less expensive to transportation trades off the healthcare system loss for millions of deaths happening each day. Now let's go to the solvency evidence. He's making sure he gets on first my empirical study outweighs. He only gives like 13 studies. I give 34. So this means that I'm the only one. That means I outweigh in terms of like the number of studies been done, and also extend my psychology evidence. That's a Burroughs evidence means that people are motivated to follow the default. So even if I don't get empirical solvency, people are going to psychologically want to do more because that's necessarily good. That's necessarily good, and also it's going to be a reason why no links to critique because this means that people are always going to be acting in consistency with what they want and not going to be inconsistent with technocratic thoughts. But also he's conceding my ratified evidence, which means that public discussion is key. So this means that even if he gains access to all of his empirical evidence, so this means that public discussion in Congress is going to put back gender transportation. Means that I swap. Now let's go to the criticism. Go to criticism. First, link turn. I say that commodity flying an animal body is bad. That's Cooper Anderson. Evidence indicates scientifically proven that animals must have same ethics. And also, turn. I create mistrust in the system. Air off on empirics. Gutman. Despite relatively wide support, organization people are unwilling to register objection often religious and cultural belief. Even non-religious people believe there should be limits to human intervention. Means that I cut the card there. This means that's the reason why I'm the only one that's going to be able to create distrust in the system, deconstruct the system, and also permutation. We can meditate in legislature cross apply to ratified evidence.
Alright. There's 210 left. What was the turn you read?
So I made two link turns. I say commodifying the animal body is bad. You talk about how I commodified the human body, and then I just cross-applied the weighing analysis that said more animals than humans outweigh on magnitude. Okay. The government evidence talks about how you create mistrust and the technocratic thought.
Do you presume consent from humans? Do you procure any organs from humans?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then the second term, what was that?
I create mistrust in the system that you're trying to take apart, or technocratic stuff. It talks about how it violates people's religion, encourages people to leave the system after the policy gets
you didn't read it, or?
I just said like the perm text we can meditate in legislature, and I cross-applied the ratified, which talks about how discourse in policy is uniquely key to solve the app. So, yeah.
Okay. What was the second term again?
The mistrust argument that I encourage people to leave the system by like violating the religion and stuff. So after the policy gets passed, it's going to encourage people to leave the system because it violates the religion and therefore it deconstructs the overall technocratic thought. But so it happens after the policy gets passed. And then I talked about how like since I give like, and then I also cross-applied the analysis for why if since this is like a real world like it actually violates people's religion and stuff. It's empirically happened in like Brazil. Means that you err off on empirics, whereas you just make like some conceptual claims. I like root them in the real world. So this means that my turn is more likely to happen.
It's gonna be quickly on like the theory debate that Kinkaid initiated. Then framework level, flow to framework level on the AC first, okay, and then K itself, and at the end AC. Sorry, that was confusing. Let me start on the theory and then the signpost. All right, everyone good? He concedes the K outweighs theory, so extending the K outweighs theory. You want to turn for the criticism, you can just but you can challenge hegemonic forms of non-obstruction throughout. Means this is outweighing his argument means you're not going to vote on you're not going to like drop the argument or anything. The K outweighs theory. He concedes this way of analysis and doesn't make any further way of analysis. But additionally, extend that might take up the role of ballot that has no link to real world fiats. Losers voting apples to translate real world change. Critiquing representation is better than policy making. If you bite the technical thought, end of policy making just pass bad policies. That's an independent reason why you prefer the criticism of his role of ballot. He concedes this takeout. He's trying to extend the argument to ring. You're not going to look at the role of ballot to weigh any impacts around. He's conceding to arguments to take it out. I did now go to the framework level of the whole debate. Extend the Nathan evidence to the straight level. 100% concede the link to the case. He just makes the argument against it. It's like that utils oppressed. That I say utils oppressive. That fundamentally misunderstands the Nathan argument. It doesn't say that utils oppressive. It says that utils technocratic. It doesn't say that technocraticism is oppressive. Technocraticism puts people into a standing reserve, and that's like it's a completely different argument than what I'm making. And go to now the K framework. Extend the role about the judges must embrace the position of the humanist educator. Okay. Extend the role about the free argument. The judge must embrace the position of the humanist educator. The judge must be responsible for the humanist educator means your obligation to vote for the debate that allows people to assert their subjectivity. He concedes all the warrants for this. There's no responsibility to the K framework. He just makes the argument trying to extend his framework to additionally extend the Dillon analysis and the Cropsey analysis. The Cropsey analysis goes 100% why actually interlinked to any of his framework arguments. And it's just a Dillon straight way analysis to question intelligence first. In order to understand epistemological starting point, we must understand the ontological questions and the independent reason why the K comes first. Go to the links on the K. You're extending the Savinius 10 analysis, the way we view the body in terms of working, we can reduce it to us to be a tool to be utilized. Heidegger describes the position of standing reserve, while in the standing reserve we can't create our own ontological stance that kills. So he makes a link to our argument that he says that like a modification of the animal body is bad, but that doesn't matter. Heidegger thinks there's a fundamental difference between the human and the animal. This argument makes no sense. I'm critiquing the way you view human bodies. He concedes that he is procuring organs from humans. That's the 100% strength of link argument I'm looking for. The Savinius 10 evidence specifically indicates that when you procure organs from humans, organs from humans, then you are commodifying their bodies. This isn't a commodification K either, so the argument doesn't respond. It's saying that we put people into a standing reserve. That's the argument that's being made here. That means that he's conceding the Savinius 10 evidence. The warrant of the Savinius 10 evidence means that you're 100% strength of link to the criticism. Also, this is the Nathan evidence 100% strength of link to the criticism too, and independent links to the K. Go to McWhorter analysis. He's considering the impact level of the criticism. Extend McWhorter, the technocratic views are like forcing the standing reserve, destroy the ability to subject to authenticate. Means this is the biggest impact back to the role of ballot. He's conceding that McWhorter that I'm showing you that he's putting people into standing reserve either through a utility or through the Savinius 10 evidence. It doesn't matter which one you're evaluating the K through. He's conceding that the impact is also clearly conceded. The McWhorter evidence is 100% strength of link back to the role of the ballot. It means that I'm the one winning offense back to the role of the ballot. I'll go down to the alt. The permutation that he makes. The perm fails. Hold on. The perm fails because claim to certainty and need to act first to open-ended journey. As Heidegger envisions the permutation is impossible. Scott, the assertiveness of hard no certainty. The intuitively demand we need to feel ourselves the best in constant rejection, suppression of the language, and think about begin to emerge from Heidegger's work. The possibility exists to appropriate ontological difference in our heritage. The way we address the interest and domination of free states. Open, give us some thoughts and names, perhaps. Open, deepest history and experiences might emerge. The world abysmal difference. Appropriate as well as consent, privilege. The differences we really to be found in universal values. Also, we should be really skeptical of this permutation. He's just making an argument away after the buzzer sounds like there's no way this should count. He also doesn't read the evidence that would support why the permutation happens. He just says perm, do the alt. That's not a permutation. There's no evidence is read. Don't give him credence on this perm. So the K debate breaks down really simply. You're evaluating the K first. This is a lot of weighing analysis by first. The way it comes before the K comes before his theory argument. He doesn't make any arguments as to why that would come first. It means you don't drop the argument. Additionally, he's conceding more arguments why I take out his role of ballot. Means he can't link any impacts back to his role of ballot. Additionally, he doesn't make any impacts back to any either of the role of ballots on his theory argument. Means that's a reason to evaluate it. Your ballot has a specific function. Means that if the theory debate matters, then it has to link back to the function of your ballot. If he's extending his role of ballot, you have an obligation to vote on the way your ballot functions. He's not linking it back to either role of ballot, which is an independent reason why you wouldn't be looking at the theory debate. That's how role of the ballot debates function. And go to the AC real quick. We've already sent the Visvanathan evidence. Now on the healthcare arguments. He makes the argument there's no sense here because he says that xenotransplantation is less expensive problematically. He's conceding the argument about the ODT8 evidence says like even if it's less expensive than xenotransplantation, he's not solving the root cause of the healthcare issue. He's conceding the ODT8 evidence as well as the Gillen 11 evidence says that opt-outs will result in trade-offs between systems. That means that he's losing the solvency debate here because it's a double bind either. So either A, he's winning the solvency debate and killing old aging population, which would probably be bad under his framework, or B, he loses the solvency debate because it's too expensive, and that turns the advantage. So the way this breaks down is pretty clear. You're evaluating my framework. It's completely conceded. Also, he's conceding links back to why his framework is bad. There was an independent reason to reject his framework on that. Also, he's conceding an independent reason why you should reject the framework because policymaking has no link to the real world. That argument is completely conceded. Additionally, he's also conceding the Freire evidence that's the role of the ballot. You should extend the Freire evidence that you should break the epistemological position of human educated. It's 100% conceded. So if the framework debate's even slightly messy, then you should err negative on the framework debate. He makes the argument you should err F on like empirics and stuff like K. That doesn't matter. This argument doesn't link back to the role of the ballot, nor does it have any sort of like a fundamental basis. Yeah, sure, like you can have empirics, but that doesn't have any sort of link back to any sort of framework. He just says empirics are good. That is an unverified just argument. So the way this breaks down is clear. Evaluating the role of the ballot and the order evidence and the link to the K. There's two conceded links to the K. He just makes an argument about he doesn't quantify animals, but that isn't a response to the K. It means that you can extend the Sphenius 10 evidence as well as the Visvanathan evidence on the 1AC. Both of those are completely okay links to the K. Even if I'm losing one of them, the Visvanathan evidence is very clearly conceded. You're an easy place to vote, easy place to link the K. It means that he needs to make order analysis, and the reason why he links the back to the role of the ballot, and impact back to the role of the ballot. Finally, the alt solve, the alternatives extended. You look at the alternative solves back. My links to the K. Solves the K means that he can never perm the K. Perm fails. Thus you negate.
When you see your perm not good.
Yeah.
Alright, continue. So your argument against the link turn is that Heidegger only says humans, right?
Yeah, Heidegger doesn't care about the animal body.
Okay.
Because the argument is that humans are the only ones that can be Dasein.
Okay. So order is going to be an overview, it'll be an overview on the critique, and then it'll be the framework debate. Yeah, I'll start on the K flow, like the substance of the K, and then framework, and then substance of the AC. All right. Okay. So Judge, ready? Ready? Alright. My opponent makes two key concessions coming out of the 2NR. He's conceding the first link term that he's conceding the second link term that I read against K. That's the Gutman evidence. So extend Gutman. This means that I create mistrust in the system, and you err app on empirics. Gutman is very specific on this issue. Gutman makes the argument that that there's been multiple countries such as Brazil and countries in Latin America where people have actually been turned away from the system of presumed consent because they realized that it was that it like violated the religion and encouraged people to mistrust the system. That's going to be a link turn on the critique because it encourages people to leave the technocratic system and also extend the weighing analysis under the Gutman evidence, which indicates that you err app on empirics because I give very specific countries in the real world in which like people have mistrusted the system, where people have left the technocratic system after the app has been implemented. So this means that I clearly outweigh all the extent, because I'm the only one that actually made any weighing analysis on the link debate. Means that I'm clearly ahead on this link turn. But also he's conceding the warrant in the first link turn that says he's commodifying the animal body. Sure, Heidegger doesn't care about animals, but his rolled ballot clearly does. You can extend my Anderson evidence. Anderson indicates that all beings necessarily have value, no matter what the framework and what the framework is. This has been scientifically proven. It means that his rolled ballot has to take into account impacts on animals. So extend that link turn. This means that he's commodifying the animal bad. That's the Cooper. That's the Cooper evidence. And also extend my weighing analysis talks about how outweighs the magnitude. Once again, the 2NR does a great job of explaining his critique, but he's not doing any weighing analysis coming out of the 2NR. I'm the only one. So it's very clear that this link turn outweighs in terms of magnitude, since there's significantly more animals than humans on the planet. This means that it's going to be inherently being more technocratic towards more animals compared to humans. Means that my impact outweighs. Sure, once again, Heidegger doesn't care about animals. That doesn't matter because he's conceding the Anderson evidence, which indicates that all frameworks, which includes his rolled ballot, have to take into account animals. The Gutman evidence that he's conceding means that I'm the only one that creates mistrust in the system, encourages people to leave that technocratic society, and this means that you also need to vote out because this outweighs on empirics. I'm the only one that contextualizes what will actually happen in the real world, whereas he's only making like these types of contextual claims. So on the framework debate, also he's also making another key concession on the framework debate. You can further extend my decide evidence indicates that the states are the most textual in the context of the resolution. Since the debate round asks the question of a just society, means that you have to look at what a policymaker was doing. He's also conceding the Waller evidence, means that you have to look to a utilitarian calculus. Also extend the Anderson evidence. This means that any form of like ethical calculation tells us we have to look to animal impacts. The Cooper evidence is very good on this issue. Means that I'm the only one that so that means I'm the only one that actually has some kind of like impact back to my framework. So since he's not extending any terms off the 2NR. So the round breaks down very simply. He's conceding one link turn, that's the Gutman evidence, outweighs on empirics. I'm the only one that contextualizes what would happen in the real world. He's also conceding the warrant in the first internal link turn that talks about how, sure, even if Heidegger doesn't care about animals, his role the ballot should, because he's conceding the Anderson evidence. So we should look to who's the best humanist educator under his framework. That entails in evaluating animals and humans, and since there's more animals than humans, outweighs on magnitude. On the link turn, outweighs on empirics. Since I'm the only one that contextualizes what happened in the real world, means that my impact more the link turn is more likely to happen than the links to trigger the impact.
Yeah.
Okay, good.